I am also just hearing that the Associated Press has called this race for Mike Braun. The gubernatorial race called for Braun. So let's send it back in to Scott and Felicia for more details on that, guys.
All right, Jenny, thanks so much. So as we look at these results again from the Associated Press, Mike Braun, senator from Indiana, is now the governor-elect, having won tonight, being declared the winner with 58% of the vote. And so it is on to the governor's residence for Mike Braun, the former senator of Indiana, who will now be taking over and continuing the Republican stronghold in the state of Indiana over the last 20 years, Felicia.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of reports were saying that it was Mike Braun's race to lose.
Right.
Obviously, this being a very red state, historically for the last over 2 decades, we've seen that. We want to get out to Emily Longnecker because she's okay, so we're actually going to go to the analysts first. Before we get to Emily Longnecker, we've got Anne Marie Tiernan sitting down with some experts who've been following this gubernatorial race from the state level, and they can give us a better bird's eye view of what we're seeing right now. That's a big development that we just got in, Anne.
Well, it is, but no surprise. And so I do want to introduce our panel here real quickly. I'm going to start with immediately to my right here. We have Leanne Halka, who is the former Indiana Democratic Party chair of the 5th Congressional District. So we're very happy to have you joining us again, Leanne. Next to her, we have Bob Vane, who is the former Indiana communications director for the Indiana Republican Party. And then here at the end, also choosing pink tonight, we have our doctor from the University of Michigan, Dr. Melissa Borja. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We just heard the news there about Governor Braun being the new governor for Indiana. Your reaction to that, Leanne?
Well, let's wait and see until Marion County, Lake County's in. You know, the polls just recently closed in Lake County. I just saw some projection calling 58% for him. Mike Braun has never gotten above 51% in any election he's ever been in. And so let's wait. It's going to be a lot closer than we think.
Okay, Bob?
Well, it can't be that close if AP's called it, and Axios did it as well. But I agree. I'm surprised the calling is happening while central time zone counties and cities, their polls have just closed. So you can't possibly know, which just means that Governor-elect Braun really rolled in the rural areas, which quite frankly, he's done well because he travels so well there.
And Evansville and of course Gary, big population areas too, that are not on our time zone right now, and their polls just closed 13 minutes ago.
And Mike Braun's not going to win Lake County. So, I mean, if I'm Jennifer McCormick, I have to rack up big margins in Marion, Lake, and some other Allen in order to have a shot. So AP and Axios calling this early means that that turnout, those numbers didn't happen for her.
And Dr. Borja, no surprise here really with these results.
Yeah, but I think it matters what you're paying attention to tonight. So there's the question of who's going to win the race. There's also the question of what the margins will be. And I'm going to bring this up over and over again tonight. In the last 3 gubernatorial races, Republicans have won by larger and larger margins. But I think tonight is an opportunity for us to see if Democrats can have a narrower margin of loss. That might be an indication down the road of a Democratic Party that could potentially be more competitive. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm very interested to see what happens tonight.
Well, but something else though, Banks utterly destroyed his Democratic opponent. James Banks was a new United States Senator. I mean, you got to look at not just the governor's race, but other races that are statewide if you're going to do some sort of renaissance for the Indiana Democratic Party.
Won't it be interesting to see too, I mean, how many people decided to pull a straight ticket versus be more selective? And there certainly were some races, I mean, you think specifically about Todd Rokita, where there was a lot of thought that maybe with Destiny Wells that she would maybe make some inroads there.
Well, we're one of the only states in this country that still has straight ticket voting. And so we also have very few competitive districts. And so you've got a lot of candidates that are just relying on money from the national, from the Republican National Committee pouring in here, and they're not getting both sides of the story. When you look at the kind of money that is spent and compare these races, the margins close when the money is spent. And so I'm really interested to see the difference in those races because because the Democrats running are really standing united on very, very similar values. And so there's some more at play than just the differentials here.
But the news cycle in the last couple weeks, and I'm not going to say dominated, but has taken notice of the fact that the Democratic, I'll be kind, the Democratic Governors Association has poured in money to McCormick. They must have seen something for them to invest the money they invested. If it doesn't come to pass, then I would imagine that someone's going to rejigger their numbers at the DGA.
Let's bring up gender here, and Melissa, tell us a little bit of what would you think about how the gender issues are playing in this election and some of the results that we'll see here in Indiana.
I think it's very clear from all of the polling at the national level and the state level that gender is going to be a big part of what we're going to see tonight. It shaped every aspect of this campaign, even before people announced. And so what I think I'll be paying attention to is who is turning out to vote today. And will women be showing up to vote? If we're seeing women in the suburbs showing up to vote, I think that could be a very interesting story for lots of different races, for the presidential race, but also from the perspective of very competitive state house races.
Right, and the reproductive rights and issues in abortion, always in all polling showing that that's a very hot topic.
Yeah, and I think the turnout for election early vote is maybe a 10-point gap, gender gap. And I think that's indicative of what was on the ballot this year, and that's reproductive rights. And I think we should pay special attention to the competitive legislative races, because again, like I said before, there aren't campaigns. There's not educating on issues in most parts of this state, but watch the numbers where we have competitive legislative districts.
Just to be kind, a point both of you all made, which I think is right on the money. It's clear that the Democrats in Indiana did a much better job of candidate recruitment, especially for state house races. They have gone out of their way to recruit veterans. I've met several of them, very impressive. Whether they win, who knows? But clearly they've rethought some of their candidate recruitment, and it may pay dividends down the road, yeah, but I don't think this election's gonna tell it for them.
Yeah. It would be hard to be recruited to be a candidate. I mean, do you want to put your family through that? You know, you watch some of these campaign ads, you see the attacks that are out there. That has to be something that increasingly is a difficult task for all parties.
You know, I have talked to so many, at least on the Democratic side, candidates that have put themselves out there this time. Nobody says they regret it. They are all playing a part in educating voters about what's at stake, what their values are, and I have yet to hear somebody saying, gosh, I shouldn't have done that. And they're making progress for the longer term strategy here. Mm-hmm.
I think it's notable that there were still a lot of races for the state house that were not contested. So I think that's part of the story here as well. So Indiana is an interesting state. We're seeing some change in certain parts of the state. I think we're going to be talking about Hamilton County a lot tonight, for good reason. Lots of interesting demographic change and political change. But I also know that there are lots of parts of the state of Indiana that don't have a lot of competitive races, and I think we need to remember that that's a large section of the state.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because I voted in Hamilton County this morning, and that's what I remarked to my husband when we left. I was surprised how many races were uncontested. Yes. All right. So much to dig into tonight, and we're going to be looking for your expertise and insight as the night goes on. In the meantime, let's go back to Scott and Felicia as some more numbers are coming in, and we have crews providing comprehensive coverage throughout central Indiana tonight.